Hi everyone, I'm Holly from Handprinted and this is Repurposing Objects for Your Printmaking Studio Linocut edition. So firstly, when you are carving your lino, it's likely to slip around on your working surface. Now you can use a bench hook to hold it in place if you like, but this will hold it in one position. What we like to do in the studio is use a piece of grip matting underneath the lino, which holds it still and stops it from sliding when you're carving, but it also means that you can rotate it on the table if you want to move it around, which is really good for getting in those details because you always want to be carving away from yourself. To prep your lino, you can use a sanding block like this. We have these at handprinted.co.uk, or you can get them from DIY stores. Add a little water to your block and sand over for better ink adhesion. You can use it on traditional lino or any of the vinyls and soft cuts as well. When you finish carving your block, you might have little straggly bits of lino that you've carved away on here and mess, so you can use a nail brush or a stiff paintbrush to work all of those little bits off before you ink up. So that way you shouldn't get little pieces of lino stuck in your ink, which can cause issues when you're printing. To roll out your ink, you'll need some kind of inking plate. We sell sheets of acrylic at handprinted.co.uk, but you can use a piece of glass or an enamel tray, works well as well. You want to make sure if you're using glass that it's toughened glass, because it needs to be strong enough and safe for you to put a little bit of pressure into when you roll. But you might be able to salvage some from old doors, anything that's got thick toughened glass like this piece here, and make sure it doesn't have any sharp edges before you use it. If you're using turns, Burton pins and tabs to register your print, if you don't know what they are, go back a few videos and find our video about turns, Burtons. You'll need to stick them to a board like this. The pins go at the top and your lino goes underneath. A really great board for these are the backs of old picture frames. They tend to be a really helpful size. They're a nice stiff board, they're not too thick and heavy, and they're pretty easy to come across. When getting your paper ready to take your print, you'll want to keep the paper as clean as possible. So we often use paper fingers. To avoid touching your paper, you can use these paper fingers to hold the corners. This is just a little piece of scrap paper. You hold the corner of that instead of touching your paper to keep it as clean as possible. So you can use scrap paper like this. Folded magazine pages work very well, or you can use old cans if you like. Be careful not to have too sharp edges, but they tend to be fine. You have a little piece of tin cut from your can, fold it in half, and they make excellent paper fingers that are also washable and reusable. You can use the paper ones a few times over, but you can use these many times over. When you're mixing your ink, you'll need some kind of palette knife, but sometimes we like to use these butter knives as long as you've got nice straight edges to mix your ink. These are also a little bit flexible, which helps with mixing ink. These make really good ink mixing knives, and you might already have a few kicking about. When you're ready to be taking your print, you might be using a Baron. If you are, it's really helpful to have a piece of greaseproof paper, just ordinary kitchen baking paper, between your paper and your Baron. It helps the Baron to slide around the paper and stops the back of your paper getting damaged. If it's very delicate paper, then it might start to pill up. So using greaseproof paper helps to protect it. If you're not using a Baron, you can just use a spoon to take a print. A lot of people use wooden spoons, which work perfectly. Find one with a nice back that you can use to take your print. But you can also use metal spoons if you like, just from your kitchen. Be a little careful because the friction will cause it to heat up a little bit. So it's maybe not suitable for very large prints, but it can work really well to take a print. You can use the greaseproof paper as well if you want to, but rub all over the back of the paper to take your print. It works fantastically. Finally, when it comes to cleaning up, you can use old rags just cut from old t-shirts and clothing, old bedding and homewares that you've got. It's really useful in any printmaking studio to have a good stash of rags. So before you throw any fabric in the bin, cut it up into rags and give it another life. Follow our videos and our blog for loads more printmaking help, tips and tricks. Happy printing!